What we're discussing here on the San Francisco 49ers Report, my name is Chase Sr. The Niners have made a couple of roster moves in the wake of that Nick Bosa injury. We're going to take a look at some Nick Bosa replacements, some players who the Niners could trade for because, according to an ESPN NFL insider, he thinks the Niners, after Bosa's injury, could make a trade. Let's begin here with topic number one. The 49ers roster moves here. Safety Jaylen Mahoney worked out for the Niners the other day. He was with this team all throughout training camp and in the preseason, has familiarity beyond just this year with San Francisco. He has been added to the practice squad. Safety Derrick Canteen, a rookie UDFA who played pretty well during training camp, has been released. Wouldn't surprise me if the Niners try to bring him back as a practice squad developmental player. And then I predicted that this was going to happen after the Niners brought him back to the practice squad. But defensive end Robert Beal has been added to the active roster. And there is no replacing Nick Bosa. It's going to have to be done by committee. It's not going to be easy because Bosa is such a one-of-one special player. And the Niners are going to need contributions from multiple players. If they can just get something from Beal, that would be huge. Because up until this point, they really haven't gotten much out of him. I thought he popped a little bit in the preseason, probably the most that he has popped and the best that he's looked since the Niners drafted him out of Georgia in 2023. And let's talk about the player here. 5th round pick back in 2023 out of Georgia. When he was playing for the Bulldogs, a pretty decorated career, a 2-time national champion. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school. He never quite lived up to being that 5-star, and obviously it's hard to do that when you're playing on a program like the Georgia Bulldogs, that roster loaded, and he just didn't start or get many opportunities because there were so many great players ahead of him. Again, the Bulldogs during his tenure when he was in Athens won 2 national championships, and their defenses were great. But the appeal with Beal has always been the size, speed, twitch, and athleticism. He's 6'4", 250. In the pre-draft process at that size, this is silly, he ran a 4.48 40-yard dash. You're running sub 4.5 at 250 pounds. You can scoot, you can move, but in his career, he really hasn't done much. 22 tackles and 1 sack in his career. The Niners like the speed. They like the athleticism. He has some decent bend coming off the edge. They also like his length, nearly a 7-foot wingspan. But at Georgia, he was a little bit raw. In his NFL career, he has been raw. And at Georgia, he only started 10 games in 5 years with that program. I'm not expecting much of him, but if you can get something from Beal, obviously that helps you out a lot. And Robert Beal, we're certainly rooting for you. This is very interesting here. So Jeremy Fowler and Dan Graziano put together an article on ESPN.com, and they pinpointed some teams who could make trades over the next few weeks going into the NFL trade deadline, and they listed the 49ers as a team to look out for. And here's what Dan Graziano said with his write-up. I'm looking at San Francisco, where the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch 49ers have never been shy about making big in-season moves. Hello, Christian McCaffrey. And they are suffering through an incredible rash of early season injuries. The latest, to start edge rusher Nick Bosa. Falls into the irreplaceable category, but that shouldn't stop the Niners from seeing if they can bring in another edge rusher to supplement whatever plan they have to compensate for Bosa's loss. And I talked about this on the show, how the Niners can survive without Nick Bosa. And this is a message for all the people out there. Chase, why do you talk about trade rumors? Because the 49ers have been aggressive in making trades in season, off season, and oftentimes I'm right about this. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the Niners try to pull off another trade. In the meantime, without Bosa, until they potentially make a move, how can they survive without him? Robert Saleh can blitz more. You run some twist stunts and games just to try to get exotic up front with trying to get free hits and a free run at the quarterback to provide some pressure. Of course, when you're without Bosa, who does a great job of collapsing the pocket, pressuring and sacking the quarterback, the coverage on the back end has to hold up. Robert Saleh, up until this point, has been very creative with how he utilizes personnel I'm looking for more of that, like let's say Jair Brown being used as a hybrid nickel and that big linebacker a little bit more. And that's something that Brown saw his role increase with from week 2 to week 3. Had like 2 snaps at hybrid nickel. Or no, he played 2 snaps week 1. He played, I think, 7 snaps week 2. And then that number went up into the 20s in week 3 against Arizona. And so do more of that. And as I noted, the existing players on this Niners roster have to step up. Now, I don't expect the trade to happen right away. I don't expect the trade to happen in the next week. I think the 49ers are going to see how they fare without Bosa over the next few weeks. They're 3-0. They have a little bit of wiggle room. They have a somewhat easy schedule. And up until this point, the defense has been stellar with Robert Saleh calling the shots. But if the defense struggles and the Niners with Saleh, Shanahan, Lynch have a conversation and they're like, man, we're not generating pressure on the quarterback, and quarterbacks are having all day to survey the field, process, and go through the reads, we need to make a move for a player, then I think San Francisco could make a move. Here are my 5 dream targets as far as trade pieces who the Niners could target to help replace Nick Bosa. And these players are all different, and they're all different ages. They're all different stylistically. The biggest star probably is Trey Hendrickson, a young player who hasn't yet signed a second contract with Jacksonville, who I think is only going to continue to get better, who has shown a lot of stride so far, is Travon Walker, another Georgia Bulldog. Kayvon Thibodeaux is a player who the Giants drafted Abdul Carter. They have Brian Burns, and so he could be expendable, and New York is 0-3, and their schedule coming up is really hard. They're already on their second quarterback. Russell Wilson benched. Hello, Jackson Dart. Jaelan Phillips is a superb player when healthy. He is recovering, or at least has recovered from a torn Achilles, but obviously with that injury history, that Achilles injury happened recently, you do worry about that. And he's slowly rounding into form, getting back to 100%. And then a player who is obviously older, but I don't think will require much as far as what you have to give up in a trade, but would be great in the locker room, maybe rejuvenated to a certain degree, coming to a contender, is Cam Jordan, who is going to be in the Hall of Fame and wear that brown jacket in Canton someday. And so with Trey Hendrickson, you're talking about a player who nobody has more sacks than him the last 2 years in the NFL. 17.5 sacks the last 2 years. The Bengals did not give him the contract extension that he wants. He's a free agent after this year. You might have to give up a first-round pick, maybe a second. He's off to another great start. He's been very durable. And if you do want to sign him to a contract extension, you could do that. And then once Bosa comes back, I know you have Mykel Williams as well, but you can play any of those 3 players at either defensive end or defensive tackle. Travon Walker probably not going to demand as much as Hendrickson, and he's younger, and I think his best football is ahead of him. We've seen the growth take place since he was selected number 1 in the 2022 NFL Draft ahead of Aiden Hutchinson, and I like Hutchinson better, but Walker's a really good player. Athletic, long, good against the run, can generate pressure on the quarterback, and you see the improvements here. Sack numbers have gone up 3.5 sacks to 10 to 10.5, and he's off to a solid start this year. You like the quarterback hit numbers and the TFL numbers, double digits in 2023 and in 2024. That's the ability to hold up and play well against the run. Kayvon Thibodeaux, I liked him coming out of Oregon. I thought he slipped a little bit in the NFL draft. So far to start this year, even though Burns and Abdul Carter are better players, he's played well. He is graded out well against the run. 77.5 run defense grade, according to PFF. His pass rush win rate, 12.5%. He has 12 pressures in 3 games, 5 run stops, and 2 sacks. As a scheme fit, I think he'd be a phenomenal player for San Francisco, and I think Robert Saleh would really like to use him. And he's under contract for next year as well because the Giants exercise his 5th-year option as he was a former first-round pick. Jaelan Phillips. Jaelan Phillips is a really interesting player because he is supremely gifted. He's a very good athlete. He's 26 years old. Obviously, you have concerns because he did tear his Achilles. Prior to that injury, it was looking like he was on pace to having a really good career and season. Unfortunately, the Achilles injury kind of zapped him early in the 2024 campaign. But year 1, 8.5 sacks. Year 2, 7. Year 3, 6.5. And then he only played 4 games in 2024, had the 1 sack. Then he popped his Achilles. He's played in all 3 games so far this year. Again, slow to start the season. But again, I mean, he came back off that Achilles injury very, very quickly. Goes to show you the freak athlete that he is. And I do think that he can still be a great player coming off that injury. For Cam Jordan, an older player who's obviously at the end of the road, but he's still playing very well, very accomplished, and he would be a great fit scheme-wise and in the locker room for the Niners. And I don't think that he would cost all that much. We're talking about a guy who is a Saints legend, and so it would be emotional for that fan base to see him go elsewhere because he's been the heartbeat and the pulse of Louisiana and New Orleans. But man, what a career. 3-time All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, a member of the 2010s All-Decade team. He has 123 career sacks, 1.5 sacks in 3 games to start this year. Other Bosa replacements here who I would like. Jermaine Johnson also recently tore his Achilles, but is a really special player when he's 100%. Carl Granderson, also of the Saints. What do the Jets and Saints have in common? They are both 0-3 to start the year. Azeez Ojulari has been a healthy scratch every game so far for Philadelphia. He's only 24 years old, and when healthy, he's been highly productive. Another Georgia Bulldog who has a lot of explosiveness coming off the edge. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, former Buck, former first-round pick, who didn't really work out there, wouldn't be a starter, but a good depth piece. And then a player who has familiarity with Gus Bradley, who's on this staff under Robert Saleh, is Kwity Paye. Played his college football at Michigan, 8 sacks last year. In a contract year, he could be expendable, but have to keep in mind that the Colts are 3-0 in this season that they're honoring the late, great Jim Irsay. So with that, who is your dream trade target for the 49ers? I gave you a few of mine. I want to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button as you scroll on down to leave those comments.